Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Welcome, everyone, to Sports Spectrum. We'll get to our conversation with Robby Rowland in just a second, and you're going to love this conversation with Robbie. But I want to tell you about a new program that we've launched about a week ago called Express Feedback for Good. We've mentioned it here on the podcast a couple times, and it's really a great way for people to support causes that they care about by sharing feedback on the brands that they interact with. And as a fan of Sports Spectrum, you can join Express Feedback for Good and share that feedback on the brands that matter to you. And each time you join and give a piece of feedback, and it literally takes less than a minute, your opinion helps create financial impact for us at Sports Spectrum. So I'd like to ask you to consider supporting our ministry with Express Feedback for Good. It's totally free and your personal information is kept confidential. Sign up today at sportspectrum.com, our website, or by texting the letters EFG to 31996. Text EFG to 31996. And working together, we can create up to $50,000 of funding for Sports Spectrum. And of course, we'll continue to use that funding to spread the gospel through the lens of sports. Robby Rowland is our guest today. A great conversation with Robbie, who I got to meet about a year and a half ago. We connected through social media and just kind of watching Robbie, following his journey. And I was privileged to be a guest on his podcast called The Robby Row Show about a year ago. And it was right at that time that I remember him telling me that he had suffered a pretty brutal injury to his lat in his arm. And this is a guy who had been in the minor leagues and kind of going through his minor league baseball journey for 8 years. He was selected in the third round of the 2010 MLB Draft, right out of high school, by the Arizona Diamondbacks, 88th overall. And through his journey, it's taken him basically here, there, and everywhere. And he's reached as high as AA, both in the St. Louis Cardinals organization and the Texas Rangers organization last year. And then the injury occurred. And Robbie has been rehabbing that injury for the last 15 months or so. And I liked having Robbie join us right now, sort of as he's going. He hasn't fully rehabbed. He hasn't gotten back on a baseball mound. He hasn't got his opportunity to fulfill his dreams, at least the dreams that he has. And so this is in the midst of the valleys in many ways as he's trying to figure out the future and where God might bring him as far as a professional baseball player, and trusting God through the process. Robbie has a great story to tell, and he's really good at telling it too, which is half the battle on these podcasts, and Robbie's an awesome guy. You'll love hearing his story. Take a listen to Robby Rowland here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Robbie, welcome to the show.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. I appreciate you taking the time and talking to me, man.
Yeah, we're sort of flipping the script, I guess, and doing the reverse order, because I was on your podcast about a year ago. And before we talk about that a little bit and kind of what's transpired just in this last year, for those that aren't seeing the Skype clips that we're putting out on social media, and for the video portion of this, you have an epic beard, Duck Dynasty-like beard right now growing.
Wow.
It is very epic. And it was the first thing I said when I saw you on Skype. I'm like, you are rocking the beard. So explain the idea of growing this beard and why.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for the compliment. That's why I get up in the morning. It's funny, man. Like when it first started, the day after I got hurt, which you know about, it was July 16th was actually the date of the injury. For those of you guys who don't know, I blew my lat out. I tore the lat in a game on one pitch. And it was that next day that and I'm a weird dude as it is. You guys will find out. But I was kind of like, you know what? I'm not gonna clip. I'm not going to shave. I'm not going to do anything with my face. Obviously, I can't grow head hair, but I'm not going to do anything until I'm back on that game mound and kind of just something silly. And at that point, I didn't know it was going to take as long as it's taking. But, hey, we're going to hold true to it and stick to it, grind it out.
It's amazing. Take us through the injury and what happened and kind of how this all transpired even to get to the point where you had to grow this beard, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, man, that's been the best part.
Well, you know what I meant.
Yeah, man, it's tough. I mean, I think anyone that knows the game or just knows sports in general, not even just baseball, but, things happen. You can prepare yourself to the best of your ability, and you can do all the things right, and you can check every single box. And at the end of the day, some injuries can still occur, and that's the nature of the beast. And that's kind of how it was for me. Is like I've always prided myself on my work ethic and my ability to check all those boxes and make sure that I'm 110% prepared every outing. And man, I'll never forget. It was such a weird thing because that particular day, July 16th, I was in North Carolina. I was feeling pretty good, and I remember that throwing program that day. And the throwing program is like the practice before the game, and I just felt really good. Ball was coming out good, and I had just pitched 3 days previous out of the pen, and it was probably the best stuff that I had since I joined that particular team. And then they called down. I think it was like the 7th or 8th inning, told me to get hot. And I started warming up in the pen, and I was like, man, I'm feeling good. Ball's coming out good. I'm always psyched to pitch, but that particular day I was like, we're going to let the big dog eat today. Yeah. And I remember going out, called time, manager comes out and calls me in, and I'm running in from the pen, and I get on the mound, and that same feeling as if I'm like 12 years old again. It'll never leave me, that I'm excited to pitch, and I'm throwing my warm-up pitches, man. This is the worst part of it all. Kind of embarrassing to think about it. I'm throwing my warm-up pitches, with the guy on deck, waiting to get in, and catcher's catching me, and man, it was just like I threw a fastball, threw another fastball, and I have the same routine every single time. Threw another fastball away, and then I went to rip a curveball. And I don't know if people can see me on video, but I just remember getting to that like point where I'm about to go into like that scap retraction layback of that elbow. And I felt like that, felt the scap or felt the lat like pull. And then, I mean, things are going so fast in that motion that as soon as I went to go with the hand to go through like that throwing zone, yep. That pull turned into that just snap. And the ball went to like someone's dugout. I kind of blacked out and fell to the ground. And it was like, and I have a high pain tolerance. I think I speak for a lot of athletes when I say that. But I remember just thinking like that was the most excruciating pain I've ever been in. Mm-hmm. And, had to get walked off the field, and that day was just tough, because I mean anytime I took a step or any vibrated movement, like it was just brutal. And I don't wish injuries upon anyone, and that was just kind of one of those unfortunate things that happened. But your character gets molded through that, and you learn from it, and you just keep chugging along. So here I am with a huge beard because of it.
Well, I mean, listen, they always say the greatest teacher is adversity, and I'm sure that there's been a lot of lessons that you've learned. But the first thing I want to kind of get to just in the past year is you post a lot about your training and your recovery and your rehab on Instagram. And I'm just curious for you, is that an accountability thing for yourself? Or because social media can be for yourself, it can be for encouraging other people. Describe the reasoning why you're posting what you're posting on social, which I think is a great thing, kind of keeping tabs on how you're doing and coming back. But what's the real meaning behind it? Is it an accountability thing?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think we can sit here all day and talk about like the good parts and the bad parts of social media, right? And I think sure. The thing for me, man, and something that I really take a lot of like responsibility in is the platform. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the platform of baseball that I've been extremely blessed with throughout my career. And I just remember always being a little kid and just loving the game and thinking like, I'm seeing all of these ball players or professional athletes on TV from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then that's it. I'm not seeing behind the scenes. I'm not seeing what they're doing to prepare for that game. I'm not seeing what they're doing after that game. I'm not seeing how they recover. I'm not seeing how they, wake up in the morning. I was like, how cool that would be is if like little kids that were inspiring to be in that position were able to see the ins and the outs of it, to not only, give them a better and deeper look at it, but to prepare them, from a mental and a physical aspect. And that's something that I always thought growing up. And now, obviously, in 2019, we live in a society, man, that we're so connected to everything and everyone. And, kind of like how I mentioned earlier, like there's bad within that, but there's a lot of good within that too. And I think that's that responsibility that I take and just kind of each and every day, like, I can make one post and I can either inspire someone to get off the couch and to get moving, or I can inspire someone that, is looking to be a pitcher or a baseball player or as an athlete in general. Right. And, that's kind of just something that I always think about. And like you said, it's an accountability thing too, because I know that, over time I have built a pretty decent audience, and it's like those people are maybe counting on me to continue to work hard, and I owe that to them to be the truest version of myself and to do whatever I can on social media to motivate them. And in that same breath, like, be as real as possible with them, right? Because social media can kind of create this false image where life is so great. You're a professional athlete, like you have no worries in the world and things are good. And that's something that I think I've been able to show pretty good is like through this injury process, man. Like, it's been a grind. I mentioned earlier when we were off the air, like, it's been a grind physically, mentally, spiritually. We go through things in life, man, that like we don't want to go through. We don't expect. We don't really prepare for those like extreme negative things in life to happen. And then when they do happen, it's like, holy, what do we do? Yeah. Like, now we've just got to learn. It's a process of learning about ourselves too. And that's something that I think is cool too to show, and just kind of taking that day by day and seeing, what I can show the world today. What am I struggling with today, and kind of just, be as human, I guess, through it as possible, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Now, you mentioned the spiritual side. I want to hear your sort of conversion story, if you will, your testimony of faith in a second. But take us through, just because we're still here in this last year, what you've been learning from God, the spiritual sort of challenges that you've gone through and lessons that you've seen in trying to rehab and get back on the mound.
Yeah, man, we could talk. This is great. We could talk about this. We could literally talk for like 4 hours today. This is going to be good.
Let's break the record. The record is an hour and 20 minutes on the podcast.
We could top that in a story about a McDonald's run. I tell you, I could talk with the best of them. But yeah, man, I was telling a buddy this the other day, and I think it's so cool. Like, it's about controlling like your perspective, I think, on things and the way you perceive certain events. And although that this event that it's this journey, it's this experience that I'm going through, right, with this whole last, year and change that God's bringing me through right now. And I'm not going to lie, like, it sucks. Did I want to go through this? Absolutely not. Did I try to do everything and anything to make sure that I didn't go through this journey? Absolutely. But it happens, right? And it's about how can I grow from this experience? And when you ask like what God's showing me, I think it's a really cool time right now, because my whole faith walk. So like we said, we'll get into it a little bit later, but when I finally devoted my life into Christianity and to God, like, that was in 2015, and I was constantly around other Christians. I was constantly around other teammates. I was, whether it be during the season and whether it be like in the off season, which I always played winter ball since 2015. So I was always around other people that were able to breathe life into me and vice versa. And I was just, and you know how it is, like when you're around other Bible believing Christians, you just have, it's just, I guess for lack of a better word, it's just easier to live a Christian life. And then for this walk in life that I'm in right now, like I mentioned, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, and God's kind of taking me into different parts of like the world to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that I can get back onto the field at 110%. And throughout that journey, like, I'm isolated right now, man. Like, I don't know anyone here. I moved here to work with a trainer that's going to get me back on the field. And again, that's checking that box as far as am I doing everything and anything in my power to get back onto the field. So I have to do that. You know what I mean? So it's been a really cool journey to see. He took me a place in Colorado first after the injury to move. I was by myself, didn't know anyone, and it was about learning about myself, right? Like, it was learning about what can I do to grow spiritually if I'm isolated. And it's not been sunshine and rainbows, man. Like, I'll be the first one to admit I'm a very honest and real person. It's been really tough, and just trying to develop a routine that I'm able to kind of do each and every day, allows me to grow spiritually. And on that same note, like, when I did get hurt, like I talked about when we were off the air, was like, that gave me a bunch of time to dive into my personal, like, brand, right? So you see, like, the podcast, you see the social media. Yeah. Like, I basically, like, run an online training business. So that's been a completely other dynamic too, is balancing that scale, right? Like, balancing, like, okay, what am I doing? Where is my energy going? Where's my effort right now? And it's tough, man. You know, like, I won't lie to anyone saying that, hey, I spend 110% energy and focus into reading scripture and memorizing scripture and growing in my spirit. Like, it's not always like that for me, you know, and I got, like I said, I'm trying to do all of this stuff on social media. I'm trying to rehab, and sometimes I fall victim of, you know, that fine line of what are you spending your energy in, and what if it is meaningful, and then trying to balance that. Well, what is meaningful? And it's been quite a journey, man. So, like, to put it simply, it's been a really cool season for me, just to kind of sit back and really look at the grand scheme of things. Obviously, we'll never really be able to, like, see God's plan right away, but it's sure. that constant, you know, that journey and that walk, and being able to sit back and look at it and seeing where he's taken me in this past year. Like, you start seeing signs, right? I'll be like, okay, I get it. I see what you're doing. It sucks, but I see what you're doing. Like, I'll be better. I'll grow from this experience. I know I will. It's just in the moment, you know, it's tough. But
well, I always tell people too, you never know God's plan for your life until you look back, which is the horrible thing about, or the difficult thing about this walk, because a plan is something that you put in place beforehand, yet you don't really see fully God's plan until you look back and see the roads that he's taken you, and sort of the crazy path and journey that you're on. And yours is a crazy one. So before I get to the minor league crazy journey of your baseball side, share the testimony, because I think people are like, well, why isn't he sharing it? So let's not put that off for a second, because I know that's what we are. We're the intersection of sports and faith. So I know that sports really intersected and brought you in many ways to a faith in Christ. Share with us what took place in 2015.
Yeah, man. So, like, you know, it's always fun to say too, because I think the world perception of like Christian athletes is like, we're Christian athletes because we were born and raised in the church, and we just that was our upbringing. That's not what it was for me. And I just want to, like, get on the record and say, like, this has nothing to do with, you know, my parents raising me, quote unquote, like, incorrectly. Sure. My parents did a fantastic job of allowing me to decide on my own, allowing me to walk through life and make decisions and experience, you know, what I need to experience on my own. And, you know, so when I was younger, it was all about sports, man. You know, I think I speak for a lot of athletes. Is like, growing up, you're always around ball. Or, you know, for me, it was basketball and baseball, and just busy. And it's actually a cool story, because, like, my mom grew up in the church, right? And she kind of got that bad taste in her mouth of feeling that forced faith, I guess you would say. Yeah. So she was like, okay, when I have kids, I'm not gonna approach it that way, because, you know, there's always that dynamic of, you know, how to go about that, I guess. And so for my brother and I, like I said, we weren't raised in the church. And when I got drafted in 2010, I was 18 years old, man. And I went out on my own. And like I said, you just experience life. And this is a whole nother story, but my first couple years of pro ball, I'm 18 years old, got long hair, no beard. And I'm grinding through it. Like, I experienced a lot of failure. Again, like, you know, I just got drafted pretty high. I experienced all this failure, and I'm kind of starting to have that self-doubt because I've never experienced failure. And all of a sudden, like, I'm going through these experiences, and they're tough and whatnot. And I get traded and I get released, and I'll try to give this condensed version. So I get traded, then I get released. 2014, I get released, and then I'm like, okay, I got to fight my way back into pro ball. So I spend a whole entire offseason essentially reinventing myself from a pitching standpoint, and finally, in the offseason of 2014, I get to a point where I'm feeling confident again and getting my my velocity back and getting to the point where I was like, okay, I can impress some scouts. And at this point, I'm 23, so I'm still essentially pretty young. Yeah. And I throw in front of some scouts, and it was the Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals scout that was one of the scouts that saw me throw in like a bullpen thing that we set up. Long story short, signs me. I get a spring training invite. So they send me all the way to Jupiter. This is the start of 2015. Send me all the way to Jupiter. New organization, new team. I don't know anybody. I'm just happy to be putting a jersey on, right? Because I just got released, and actually ended up having a pretty good spring training. They signed me to a contract. They sent me all the way to low A, which I was in low A in 2012. So I'm like, okay, it sucks, but I have a totally different mindset and totally different perception of how to approach this game, because again, I just got released, man. So I'm just happy to be there, whereas before when I was 18, 19, 20, I was expecting to succeed because of my status, right? I was like, oh, I was drafted high. I should dominate these guys. And so now fast forward 4 years later, totally different mindset, totally different approach, and kind of just happy to be putting a jersey on anyways. And so it turns out, again, like I mentioned, don't know anybody at this point, and I am pretty sociable, so it's not extremely hard to make friends, but I get put into a position. So I go to Peoria, Illinois, low A, and I get put into this host family's house, right? So I don't know. They're just kind of assigning host families at this point. So I get put into this host family's house, and turns out 3 Christians, Christian athletes, still talk to them all this day. And every night they would meet in the basement of the house after games. We had a really cool house. And the host family, not to mention, was Bible believing Christians as well. Yeah. So every night my friends at this point now, my teammates, were meeting in the basement and talking. At that point, I was like, what are they talking about, man? And I'll never forget to this point. One of my best friends now, one of my teammates that I lived with that year, I'll never forget this. He was in the basement and he was talking to a buddy, and he said the words that he's worried that he's going to fall victim of loving baseball more than he loves Jesus. And I'll never forget, man, I heard that and I was like, that is absurd. I was like, I love baseball so much. I can't substitute that for anything. And this is a point in my life where I wouldn't date. I wouldn't go out with friends because of my passion and commitment to my craft. I was so committed to that. And I heard that statement. I was like, this guy's out of his mind. It's true what they say. Christians are freaking weird. This is I couldn't, whatever. So time goes on, and the season started say early April, and time goes on, and they meet more and more, and I'm starting to listen more. I mean, you just how it is. You get generally curious. Start listening more, and then I think it was around. I want to say the date was May 19th, and this is I finally sit in on one. And because I'm just genuinely curious as it is, and I finally sit on one, in one of those I guess quote unquote meetings that they had, and they start
Bible study, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, it was a Bible study. It was more of hey, what is God showing you throughout this season? What are you learning about yourself, right? Gotcha. Because as an athlete, you go through success, failure, whatever, and I just sit in on one, and then I sit in on another, and sit on another, and sit on another, and then it turns out I just start perceiving different things, whether it be the game of baseball or just the world, differently. And I know that's going to sound weird. And then it was just all of a sudden that one day it clicked. And I was like, you know what? How crazy is this journey that I'm on, from going from this point in my life to that point in my life to this point in my life, all to be in this exact moment in this exact house with these 3 other individuals, all professing, Christians. I'm starting to see this plan, right? We talked about this plan thing earlier.
Yeah.
Like I'm starting, this is coming into fruition now for me. And all of a sudden, like I just felt that calling of God saying, dude, let's go, man. You're mine. You know, like I've brought you to this exact moment for a reason, and you need to open your eyes now. You know, it's not about, you know, I brought you here to have success finally in professional baseball. It's like, no, I brought you here and I've walked you through this this journey in baseball for this reason and this reason alone. And so as soon as, and I can't describe it any more than I can just say I felt that calling and I felt that feeling. And at that exact moment, I was done. I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, let's go. You know, and at that point, I was kind of like, you know, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it, but I know I want to do it. And it was that moment where, you know, you commit. And then each and every day is that new learning curve, and like I said, I'm just a genuinely curious person as well. So, you know, I grabbed this thing they call a Bible, and I said, what do I do? You just kind of start learning, and you grow through it too. And it was funny, and I don't often like to talk about this part, but as soon as I really committed my life to Christ, that gave me this sense of, hey, baseball's an outlet, and it's a good platform, but it's not life anymore. Right. And as soon as I started perceiving, you know, baseball as that, I started having a lot more success. Yeah. And I'm not sitting here saying like, hey, be a Christian and you'll be a good athlete. We know that that's not how it works, right? And I think I've learned that that's not what God wants. God doesn't necessarily, you know, always want you to succeed. I think we can sit and talk about that for days too. But it was as soon as I kind of took my foot not completely off the throttle, but just a little bit, and started focusing on, you know, the more important things. It was I started seeing results, and I think it wasn't about, oh, I need to learn more about Christ because I want to do good in baseball. It was just about like, you know, baseball's kind of taking this back seat. Like you know, it's weird things happen because you start seeing that change.
We'll get back to our conversation with Robby Rowland in just a second. Man, is he good. But I want to tell you really quick about Express Feedback for Good and really just encourage you to partner with us on this. It's an initiative to generate up to $50,000 for us at Sports Spectrum, and it costs you nothing. It literally takes a minute each day for you to provide feedback on a brand that matters to you, and it costs you nothing, and it helps us generate up to $50,000 for Sports Spectrum. If you believe in this ministry that we're doing here with Sports Spectrum, bringing these stories of sports and faith, I want to encourage you to get involved with Express Feedback for Good. There's no gimmicks here. When you join Express Feedback for Good, your personal information is kept confidential, and you'll only be contacted in relation to the program. Here's how you can get started. Sign up at the website, sportspectrum.com. That's our website. You can go there and sign up, or you can simply just do a text, EFG, the letters EFG, to 31996, and you're in. Giving a single piece of feedback takes about a minute and contributes up to $2 towards our $50,000 goal. We'd love to have your help on this, and you personally can create up to $200 of impact just by sharing your opinions about your real experiences about products that you care about. I hope you'll consider joining us here at Express Feedback for Good and Sports Spectrum, and together we can bring real impact to our ministry and expand our ability to share the gospel through the lens of sports. Let's get back to our conversation with Robby Rowland here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Robby, I laugh, and it's not really meant to laugh at. It's meant to laugh just in the kind of crazy journey that you've lived in. You've mentioned a couple of places, Peoria, Illinois, and I'm just looking. I actually printed this out on my script of the questions I have, but also just kind of reading through the minor league journey. We've done this with a couple people we've had on, both coaches and players. And I don't think people truly understand the grind that is for minor leagues, because spoiler alert, you have not made it to the majors yet, and I want to talk about that part in a second. But listen to the places you've been. I mean, you're just going to laugh hearing this. Missoula, West Virginia, some of these places might overlap. Bradenton, I assume that's Florida. Peoria, Illinois. Palm Beach, Springfield. Is that Springfield, Illinois? Springfield, Missouri. Okay. Yeah. Surprise, I think that's Arizona in the Arizona Fall League. Palm Beach again, Springfield again. Even in the Puerto Rican Winter League, Criollos, pronounce it.
I do it all the time. Criollos de Caguas.
There it is. The Criollos, and then the Lincoln Salt Dogs, the Southern Illinois Miners, the Frisco Rough Riders, and then last year, when the injury occurred, the Down East Wood Ducks. So this is not your glamorous life of, I was in Boston and I was traded to Phoenix or Arizona, and now I'm over to Houston and down to Denver.
Went to New York.
This is not what this is, right? So this is a podcast, obviously, but in a nutshell, this is crazy. And at some point, Christian or non-Christian, your head might be kind of spinning a little bit, right? And trying to walk through this minor league journey.
Yeah, man, it's so much fun though.
Yeah, I'm glad you're embracing it.
It's so much fun, man. So just to give you guys some context, my dad played, right? So my dad played parts of 10 years professionally, parts of 6 years in the big leagues. And as soon as I was born, I was thrown into the fire, that living out of the suitcase, constantly moving, not really establishing any, much friendships, because you knew that once the season was over, you move or, trades, whatever, and not saying that I was 8-10 years old when he was playing. No, I was a baby and I was really, really young. But I think just something about that experience kind of gave me, I don't know what it gave me. It gave me that sense of this is what I want to do. Right. And my mom will attest to this too, is even ever since I was in high school, freshman year, it was kind of just that calling of, I want to be on my own. I want to be out. I want to be traveling. I want to see different parts of the world. And I think, that's the coolest part. We talk about the grind, right? We talk about the bus rides. We talk about all of these other, intricacies of professional baseball, minor league baseball. And yeah, it sucks sometimes, but if you kind of alter that perception on what you're able to do. And that's something that I started, being able to do once I got older, was I'm going to town to town to town to town. But how many people would love to do that? How many people would love to see the world? And I'm getting to play baseball, and do it. And I think as soon as I changed my perception from the have to the get to, I think it's completely changed my outlook on different things. And that wasn't something that just happened like this overnight, right? We talked about earlier when I had just gotten released and I was able to put a jersey on again. It was, you go through experience, you go through life, and then you kind of you get molded through those experiences. And that's something that's kind of my message to a lot of people through, whether it be writing blogs or just Instagram, is, if you can just kind of change your perception on what you're going through just a little bit. And I hate to be the cliche guy, that's always trying to see the positive out of every single situation, even though it's hard to do. Yeah. But it's true sometimes, how many people would love to be in your shoes, and even though you're grinding right now, even though I have an injury and I haven't thrown a pitch in a game for, I can't do the math off the top of my head,
14
but a long
months
time.
Or 15 months.
You're better at math. Yeah. And even though I haven't done that, I've grown, through that experience. And it's not necessarily okay, what did I learn about how to avoid that injury again? Because as I alluded to earlier, things happen of that nature. But it's I've grown and I'm able to take each and every experience that God puts me through and kind of take bits and pieces of that and maybe use my experience through life and my walk in faith through this experience, and maybe share that with someone else who maybe hasn't gone through an injury process or hasn't gone through, minor league baseball. And I'm able to share that with someone who's now better equipped to potentially handle that for themselves. And I think that's kind of the power of each and every experience. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm going to have a heck of a story when I do make that big league debut, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to be cool.
Absolutely, and I love that you just said that, because that's going to take me to haven't even to ask the question about you getting to the big leagues. But let me have a story or two. Listen, the best story you could ever tell about your time in the minor leagues is coming to faith, right? Like you just said, you shared that story. But I know that you have other ones, because the minor leagues is just a band of misfits all going around trying to accomplish something all together. So give me one story that sticks out in the 8 years you've spent through the minor leagues, all of those different cities and different even countries that we've explained and shared. Give me your favorite sort of non-coming to faith story, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even have to think about this one. All right. So
love it.
2010. So again, 2010 is the year I got drafted, and I'm 18, and we're on a overnight bus ride, right? So it's Pioneer League, which is known for pretty sucky travel. Let's just put it that way, because you're taking buses everywhere. And I think for this particular trip, we were in Missoula for a home game. So that was where we were at.
That's Montana, right?
Missoula, Montana, beautiful country.
Yeah.
And the whole Pioneer League, actually, you kind of name the places that you play. It's like, man, those are beautiful places. Yeah. But anyways, so we were going overnight bus, Johnny, from Missoula to Casper, Wyoming. That was the Rockies at the time. I think they're in Grand Junction now. Okay. But it was Casper, Wyoming, which is a different part of the world as it is. But the way that we had to get there was like, again, this is overnight, so everyone's trying to sleep, or it's even like it's dark outside, so you can't really see anything, right? So, but the way we had to get there was you take a mountain, and you're on top of a mountain, and we're on a big old bus, and we're having to like do these turns. And next thing you know, like as I'm trying to fall asleep and whatnot, we're at a complete stop, and we're on a mountainside. So next thing you know, the bus driver gets out, and everyone's starting to wake up now from inside the bus, and we're kind of like, what the heck's going on? Sidebar: Adam Eaton, outfielder for the Nationals. I remember he shared this same exact story on I think like MLB The Rundown or MLB Network or something. It was funny. Okay. But so we're at a complete stop, and now all of a sudden people are starting to wake up, and now people are like looking up, and as people wake up, like we can see in the front of the bus outside that there's like a construction crew, but we can't really see like how intense it is, right? And so now at this point, everyone's awake, and we're starting to get off the bus to like figure things out. So as we all get off the bus, we see that we're on a mountainside. If we look to our right, we see that we could literally just fall down this mountain. It's like into the abyss. And then in front of us is this construction crew that's apparently telling us that, we got to do X, Y, and Z, and the road's going to be closed for another, like, say, 4 hours. Oh. And mind you, it's 2 a.m. And we have a game this night. So we're playing at 7 p.m. in Casper, Wyoming. We're at a complete stop on a mountainside, like 9 billion feet up. And we're all tired, and everyone's cranky, and we're in the minor leagues, and our post-game meal was probably cold pizza. And we're just grinding. And all of a sudden, like, we're just like, we're going to have some fun with it. So we start talking to like the construction crew, and we start I just got my first iPhone this year, so I thought I was cool taking pictures with it. And we're grabbing like the construction signs, and we're putting the hard hats on, and we're taking all these pictures, just having fun. I wonder if I still have those pictures. They got to be somewhere. But it was awesome. Just like you look back at that, and you're just like, oh my goodness, what just happened? So finally we get out of there, and it was probably like we get out of there at 4 or 5 a.m. and make the rest of the trip to Casper, Wyoming. I think we get there like in the afternoon. Granted, like it was a show and go day, right? So we were able to like maybe get a few hours of sleep in the hotel room, and then go to the game. And I think that series we ended up like getting swept. We weren't really good that year, anyways. But it was just it was just one of those things. Where like,
I mean, that's the minor league world, right? That is the minor league world.
That is the epitome of like minor league,
especially the low levels. In the I know that you've been as high as AA, and AA gets a little bit better, but the rookie league is the rookie league, and it's the rookies. You're staying in Motel 6s, eating cold pizza. 8 of you rooming in a place together to save money. I mean, it's just the story.
That's true. So that's another story that was on the top of my head too. Is that not the first year, but my second year in 2011, we were 8 deep. No, I think it was 7. We were 7 people in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Just to save money, because you don't have any money, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, man, I got really accustomed to sleeping on either floors or air mattresses. This is how weird I am. Like, I've gotten so accustomed to the minor league lifestyle. I don't know if you can like see in the video, like the back of my apartment, but like you'll see this little cot on the floor. And that's my bet, because I've gotten so accustomed to not needing, the glamorous stuff, and just living. And I can't go back. I can't just all of a sudden be like, okay, I need a king bed. It's going to be a California king. Give me a Tempur-Pedic with the coolant mattress. It's like, no, it's like what I'm not comparing minor league baseball to the military whatsoever. I just want to clarify that. But it's kind of like that, right? You hear people that go over there and come back, and it's just completely different. But all right,
so explain how you end up in Omaha, Nebraska at Creighton University. And the funny story goes that you never went to college. You actually left out of high school, drafted, I don't think we said this fully, drafted third round 2010 MLB draft by the Arizona Diamondbacks, 88th player overall, and grinding through the minor leagues. And now you have the injury, you're rehabbing the injury, and somehow, some way, you end up on a college campus, sleeping on the floor, as you just showed us in the Skype video, in Omaha, Nebraska. So what happened?
In my 200 square foot apartment that's turned into a yoga studio because I just want exercise equipment in here. Oh man, it's I don't know. It's funny, dude. Like, so the injury occurred. They, like I said, they originally diagnosed it as a grade 2, which didn't require surgery at the time. So they sent me back home to California saying, hey, we're going to set you up in a rehab thing. Like, there's nothing really we can do at this point since there is no surgery. So I go back home. And I spend, I think, a month in my parents' house, Northern California, beautiful part of the world. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, no offense, Mom, Dad, I can't do this anymore. I'm 26 years old at the time. Like, I'm getting out. So I move into not Southern California, San Luis Obispo. If you've ever been there, another beautiful part of the world.
It's wine country, right?
Oh, it's every country, man. It's just it's gorgeous, And I move in with a buddy who's down there, and so I'm there for I think like maybe a month, maybe 2, and then finally, this relationship occurred that I'm about to talk about via podcasting. So that's a cool another networking type relationship. I reached out to a very well-versed trainer, baseball trainer in the industry, and had him on the podcast. And then obviously we talked about my injury status and where I'm at. And he's like, well, hey, I'm in Colorado at this time. I would love, you come out and maybe we can get some sessions in. And cause at this point, like, we're kind of starting to get to that area of, what do I got to do to get healthy for winter ball? Cause I always usually, like you mentioned, go to Puerto Rico and play winter ball. Yeah. So I created this relationship with this individual, and I packed all my stuff up. I actually ended up selling the car that I had because it was only like a little Camry. I had to sell that car because I was going to move to Colorado where there's snow, so I had to get a bigger car. And so I sold that, got a bigger car, threw all my stuff in that car. Mind you, I'm like a total nomad, like hashtag van life guy. Like, I love this stuff. And so I got a like a little SUV and moved out to Colorado. And trained with this guy, and then it came to the point where he was getting his acupuncture license in Colorado at the time, so he was only going to be there temporarily. But we trained for 2 months, and then he was like, "Hey, my actual home is in Omaha, Nebraska." He's like, "If you want to continue our training," and at this point, like, I'd just gotten the surgery, so it was like, okay, now we're really going to have to rehab this thing. So I was like, all right, man, moving to Omaha, so that's when I talked to you. I said, I don't even know how I got on Creighton campus. I literally just typed into Google, like, cheap studio apartments, Omaha, Nebraska, and saw the first one, and it was, the cheapest one or whatever. And I said, okay, I'm moving there. Moved here and found that I was on Creighton campus, students walking around everywhere, and I'm like, holy heck! And now I'm here, and what just happened? What the heck happened? But that's the journey, right? Like, you kind of go through things, and you do everything and anything in your power to put yourself in the best possible situation to accomplish your goals. And I have big freaking goals, man. Like, I'm not scared to admit that. And obviously the journey of my baseball career, people can perceive as being complete failure, but like, I kind of look at it differently. I've learned so much throughout my almost decade in baseball at a professional level, and it's not done, man. That's the best part of it too, is like, yeah, I'm going to be out for more than a year, but I think that's only going to make the story sweeter. So I'm excited for what the future holds.
Explain that a little bit for those listening. We've had a lot of guys on, actually, and one that's, I don't remember his name that comes to mind, but a guy that we recently had on in the last few months who quit at 25 and just said, you know what, God's calling me away. He's calling me to ministry. We had another guy on who pitched at TCU and just was like, you know, I don't want to go through this grind anymore at 26, and went through the minor leagues. Very similar to your story, just in terms of where he's been, double A, single A, kind of just grinding through, and was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So what keeps you going? Why do you want to keep doing this and moving forward and achieve? You said you have tons of goals, big goals. Let's start with the baseball goals first, because you got a lot of media things going on and training things that are just awesome, and that's certainly probably something you're looking at. But from a baseball perspective, as you're going, trusting in God, still trying to achieve, and like you said, someday reaching the major leagues and being able to throw that pitch. So what keeps you going?
Well, can I include like the spiritual thing too?
Absolutely, include it all.
So it's I mean, it's a baseball goal, but I think like I mentioned earlier the platform, right? Like as Christian athletes, we always talk about the platform, and like the platform is essentially we're called to God to use that platform for the advancement of the kingdom. And I look at like what I've kind of gone through, and I look at the journey, and I'm not sitting here saying like my faith walk and my quote unquote story is superior to anyone. I just look at it in the sense of like, man, God is using me, and God and the passion and the commitment and the drive and the motivation, everything that I have for the game of baseball is not by accident. You know, and I always look at kind of like the big picture, and I can't sit here and say like, you know, this is all happening just by like coincidence and accident, and I'm supposed to just be done with baseball at this point in my life, and then whatever God throws at me, like we handle. Like I just don't look at it that way. I look at it in the sense of I'm going through this super unique story or journey that God's going to use, you know, at some point. And even if he doesn't, it's not like the end of the world. But I just think, I don't know, it's just this weird this weird perception that I have. And yeah, I've always kind of been an individual that I just strive for being the best, you know, possible version of myself. And like I mentioned, man, the way that I had just approached this game, you know, it's just weird. Like I can't explain it. Like I just love it. And I think from that, you know, God's going to use something really, really cool. And that's going to be something to absolutely, at the end of the day, you know, spread the kingdom, and just somewhere along that line, I think I'm going to, and even just where I am now, like we talk about like the social media reach, you know, or we just talk the reach via teammate to teammate, or the people that I kind of come into encounter with, and they hear that story. I want them to hear that story and see God's work in that. And yeah, I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know, but like I mentioned, I'm excited for it. But it's tough to sit here and explain. I know probably didn't do a good job on that, but it's mine, and it'll be interesting at the end of the day.
So as we wind down, let's look forward here in the immediate future. You're rehabbing. It's the fall. How soon before you can, or where are you in your rehab, I guess? And then is next spring a realistic goal for you? I guess even it's still winter, February, March, to try and hook on with a team, whatever and wherever that might be. Take us through like your goals here immediately in the next few months, baseball wise, to kind of get back on that mound.
Yeah, so we're actually we're doing good, man. We're doing good right now. It's so funny to sit here and like think about. We talk about how just like athletes are just they live their life differently. So just to give you like kind of a painted picture, like I'm literally, my next move cannot be done until like my arm tells me what to do. So I'm literally basing like my lifestyle off how this guy feels. And what I mean by that is like my lease is up here. And for a guy with commitment issues, I signed like a 6-month lease here, which was crazy in and of itself. But this lease is gonna be up, and it's like I'm going to pack the car, and I don't know where my next move is, because the goal for me right now is to play winter ball at some point. And I've been kind of in touch with the team that I usually go over and play with, and we're looking at a second half return, which would be in the middle of December. So we're literally just kind of basing everything off of this guy day in, day out, right? It's a new experience every single day. There's good, there's bad, there's ups, there's downs. And it's just about doing anything in your power, to put yourself in that best possible situation. So, we talk about me having big goals, like, this surgery is supposed to be 12 to 14 months recovery, and I'm trying to make it back in, what would it be, 10 months? So that's the goal. That's the mindset. Obviously, we're going to be completely intelligent and approach it the right way to make sure that I don't get hurt when I do return. But it's about, just working hard and controlling the things that you can. And, so we'll see. It's going to be interesting because, like I said, my lease is up here in a month, and I don't know where I'm going to go next. But I do know that I'm really trying to get back this winter, because it's no secret. I'll be the first one to admit it. Like, I'm behind multiple 8 balls in my career because I just had surgery. I just missed a year. Yeah. It's not going to be easy for me to get signed, not even to mention the talent nowadays in the game of baseball is absolutely absurd. So I'm going to need to play this winter. I'm going to need to show people that I'm healthy, that I'm good, I'm back, and I can compete at a high level, because if I don't, then I'm even behind. Throw another 8 ball in there. You know what I mean? So it's going to be an interesting ride, one that I'm really excited to tackle. And that's kind of just the mindset going into it, man, is like each and every day you have 24 hours in a day. Like, how can you improve yourself from a, physical, mental, spiritual standpoint, and kind of having that big picture mindset, but also looking at it in the small picture as far as like, okay, I have this day, this 24 hours. Let's do everything that we possibly can to put ourselves in a good situation to be successful and to accomplish our goals. And if it doesn't happen, then I'm able to look back at the end of the day and look in the mirror and say, yo, dude, like, I did everything I could. And that's that. And then it just wasn't meant to be. So, yeah.
God puts the desire. They always say, God gives you the desires of your heart is a constant thing I hear. And, I believe that. But the desires of the heart is something that might be completely different than what we think. So your desires of your heart, I'm saying this to encourage you, Robbie, is, to be a baseball player, but maybe it's the desires of your heart are to glorify God through baseball, and whether that means you have to make it to the majors and have this incredible, moment that's, movie-like, or, which you could easily do, or, you don't. And yet God's still going to give you the desires of your heart, which is hard, like I said, because we don't know quite fully what that means. But let me ask you this as we wind down. So what are you learning from God today? Because I know I asked you in the beginning what he's taught you over these last, I guess year, 15 months, whatever it is since the injury first happened. But today, because he teaches us something new every day, it feels like, and you're sitting in a studio apartment with the, with a sleeping bag and a pillow. Yeah. What are you learning from God today?
Yeah, man. So I was just in my morning read. It's funny you mentioned, just a sidebar, the whole desires of the heart thing. So yesterday's devotional actually talked about this, how it's like, we always say, listen to the heart, right? Like, even like non-Christians alike, like, you hear the advice, listen to the heart, where it's like, maybe don't listen to the heart, because like I know, I speak from personal experience too, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. Like, I have a ton of like worldly desire, fleshly desire.
Sure.
And it's not about, like, for me, I can't, I have to deny that sometimes, right? Like, I have to listen to like the Spirit. I have to listen to like the Word, and that's kind of the way like I approach it. But as far as what I'm learning throughout this walk, this journey that I'm on here in the last 12, 14 months, it's tough, man. And I'm not going to sit here and try to explain that I completely see it and I'm 100% good and everything's, sunshine and rainbows. Like I said, I still struggle and I still learn and I still fall on my face each and every day. Right. But what I'm kind of learning right now is like, everything, let's try to put this in a way that I'm not bagging on the game of baseball, but there's a lot of like worldly desire that I have, right? Like, I want to be in the big leagues. Yeah. Okay. I want to I want to get attention for the work that I put into my craft. I want to show the people how hard I'm working and how that hard work can, breathe into success. And sure. I want to show people that, and I want that attention and all of these things that I'm desiring as far as, we haven't really touched on like what I'm trying to create as far as my personal brand, but, each and every day, like I'm trying to find new ways to reach more and more individuals to inspire. But at that same time, like I'm spending a lot of time, on social media, on Instagram, on podcasts, on this and that. And I think all in all, like, I look back at the end of my days a lot of the times where I kind of, sit and meditate for a little bit. And I think like there's certain days where God's telling me like, hey, is that all worth it?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Because I'm in Ecclesiastes right now, and it's like everything under the sun, man. Like,
yep.
There's nothing fear new. God, dude. And that's the thing that I struggle with, because that's why I wanted to mention, like, I haven't really quite figured it out, but it's tough because that's something that I'm constantly struggling with. And it's funny, God punched me right in the nose the other day at a church sermon. Was like, that's what it was on. It was on like, what are you spending your time on? And are you spending time focused on eternity, or are you focused on spending it on that temporary life thing? Yeah, and it's like, shoot, man, that's so much truth, and it's tough. It's tough. I think that's going to be, and that's why I kind of look forward to this path, because each and every day God is showing me that. And it's just about me kind of continuing to grow in that relationship. In the sermon the other day, and it punched me right in the face, but it was like, what are you doing? And it was kind of just that realization of like, man, I just spent, say a whole entire week on, certain Instagram posts about a drill that would actually benefit pitchers. And it's like, what was that? Is that for, eternity, or is that for, a temporary thing in this world? Yeah. And it was like, well, see, because then it's like we could sit here and have that conversation of like, are you glorifying God with that, or are you trying to glorify yourself?
Yeah, but see, the post might lead to you building a relationship with someone that then might allow you to share your faith. So that's a really weird line to look at, because, is it glorifying God by you spending an hour or whatever it was? Maybe, maybe not. But if it leads to a conversation it's the same way like with you, it led to you going to a host home that led to you in a basement that led to somebody saying, hey, come on and listen to what we're talking about, which leads you to this whole, walk with the Lord. Yeah. So that's a tension I can understand. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's crazy too, right? Because like, we don't know. We just kind of, and we just go about our day and we do what we think is right. And I think the biggest piece of encouragement that God has shown me is, set yourself up for success throughout the whole entire day. And what I mean by that, if you're a young athlete that's listening to this, is like, if you need to wake up 10, 15 minutes earlier to get into the Word or to read a devotion and meditate on that throughout the day, then do it. If you need to be like me and be a weirdo and put sticky notes all over your walls saying like, glorify God, or freaking Jeremiah 29:11, John 3:30, and we got scripture everywhere. So I'm constantly like writing my post out, and I'm blogging, and I'm podcasting. But then I look up and I see like, hey, this is temporary, like let's get going. Yeah. And it's like, oh, all of a sudden now I have God on my mind, and I mean, you know how it is, man. Like, you gotta constantly be mindful of that. And I think if we can kind of set ourselves up for success throughout the whole entire day to kind of meditate on that word, and something that I'm trying to incorporate more now is like, I'm not great at memorizing scripture. Sure. So each and every day I take kind of like a new scripture, and even if I don't advise everyone to do this, but if I need to take like one of these little Sharpie pens right here and write it on my forearm. Yeah. And so throughout the whole entire day, I'm thinking of that scripture, and I'm doing my bench press in the gym, and I get to full extension, and I see that scripture line. I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of those things that, those little tiny things throughout the day that can, help aid in your walk and grow in your relationship with God. Because at the end of the day, man, like that that relationship with God that trumps all. And I can speak from personal experience. This is another whole like hour conversation I can have with people, but it's like, I'm in a position right now where I'm happy, right? Like I'm doing a lot of good things, I think, on my website, my online training, my Instagram, like my podcast. I'm reaching a lot of people, and some would perceive that as like, yo, you're killing it, dude. But at the end of the day, like I mentioned, that stuff's temporary, man. And at the end, and when I go to bed at night and I look back, like, did that sustain me? Was that like something that I could do every single day and find happiness and joy from? Yeah, maybe, but it's going to be one of those roller coaster things, right? Like same with the game of baseball. It's you kind of go in a roller coaster, and relationship with God, man, that's constant. If you breathe into that and you work in that, like that's going to be the ultimate joy and satisfaction. And that's something that I learn every single day, and I relearn, right? Like you go through these past, you go through like the dull. I guess that's something like I talk about often. It's like those dull moments where you spend like a week or two and maybe you skipped a church or you skipped a Bible study and then you're just feeling like whatever. It's a real like testament to what is the ultimate satisfaction, right? Yeah. Like, is it spending time with fleshly desire, worldly desire, seeking after things that are going to be temporary in the long run, or is it seeking after eternity, right? Is it seeking relationship with God that provides ultimate joy, happiness, and satisfaction? And I speak literally from personal experience. And like I said, man, I'm not great. I'm not perfect. I'm far from it, but it's that constant learning curve and that constant, figuring out what is going to provide, most happiness throughout
Absolutely.
that journey.
Robbie Rowland, I'm going to make mention on the back end of this podcast once I'm finished, all the great things you have going on. I love following you on Twitter, and you take little videos and you break them down and you show a pitch here and there and you're just shaking your head like, look at how this guy's throwing his pitch. And I just love it. And I love the stuff you're doing on Instagram with your training.
Thanks,
and your podcast. I was on the podcast. If anybody wants to go listen to that episode or any of the episodes, it's called the Robbie Rowe Show. Awesome stuff, man. Thanks for being here on the show. And I really can't wait to get you back on, whether it's in a year, 6 months, 2 years, and tell the story as you're going and how God's working in your life, brother. Thanks again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate your time.
Great stuff there from Robby Rowland here on Sports Spectrum. Give him a follow over on Twitter and Instagram at RobbieRow_12. If you just search Robby Rowland, you'll find him there on his social media pages. And he's very active, as he talked about, posting a lot of good stuff, especially from a baseball perspective. Robbie's a great dude. And we spent about an hour talking to him. And an hour is a long time. It's a little longer than we normally do on this podcast, but I just thought he had so much good stuff to say. I wanted to keep going, and a lot of great stories. Love the story of being in Missoula at 18 and getting stuck on his bus trying to get ready to play a game in Wyoming the next day. But he had a lot of great stuff to share, and I also love that there's way more that's going to come his way to be able to share. I mean, we spent an hour, and we probably could have done 2 or 3 hours, and he's still kind of in the midst of walking through that valley, if you will, to see where the Lord's going to take him. I'm excited to see what happens to Robbie in the future, and love to have him back on here on the podcast, maybe in 6 months, maybe a year, who knows when, just to talk about all that God has done in his life. So give him a follow. Let him know you heard his story here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Again, we really appreciate it when you guys click that subscribe button on whatever app that you're listening to this podcast on. If you've never heard of Sports Spectrum before, we just want to say welcome. We're so glad to have you. Become a subscriber of the Sports Spectrum podcast by, like I said, click that subscribe button. You can also subscribe to our magazine, $18 for an entire year. Get you our quarterly magazine. It is at sportspectrum.com. That's our website. You can also find all sorts of great free content over at sportspectrum.com. Articles all day long on the intersection of sports and faith. This podcast is on there. A daily devotional every morning to start your day is also there at sportspectrum.com. See you next time with a brand new episode here on Sports Spectrum. Have a great rest of your day.